Hello students! Today we are going to make a landscape paper collage. I am going to show you how to blend a gradient of warm and cool tones with little pieces of paper. This project will involve a lot of prep work and patience, but if you take the time with the little details, you are going to create an amazing masterpiece. Let's begin. For this project, you will be needing scrap paper to sketch out your landscape collage and a pencil. You will need 1 to 2 sheets of cardstock paper, tape, scissors, liquid glue, a container for the liquid glue, and a paintbrush. For the pieces you will be gluing together, you will need black paper for the shadow of the landscape. Then you will need to decide if you want a warm tone sky or a cool tone sky. To finish this project by the end of art class, I suggest you only pick one. But if you want to work on half of the project today and finish the rest later to get the same result of my project, grab both warm and cool tone sheets of paper. I wanted violet in my collage, but I didn't have violet paper, so I took a piece of white paper and colored it purple. I also ended up using little disposable cups to organize my colors. If you have little containers to pour your pieces of paper into, it will be helpful, but you don't need it. Just make sure to place your tiny pieces of paper into separate piles. Maybe place them all into separate piles on a blank sheet of paper if you don't have individual containers to keep things organized. Pause the video here to gather your materials and color the sheets of paper you need to have for your artwork. When you have all your materials ready, press play and continue along with me. The first thing we are going to do is draw a simple sketch of what we want our landscape to look like. Everything we will be sketching out will be solid black, as it will be a dark shadow. I want to make a wintry scene, so I'm going to quickly sketch where I want some pine trees and a larger tree with no leaves. I'm also putting a circle here that will represent the sun and the moon. You will understand what I mean once we begin working on the collage. Remember, this sketch does not have to be perfect. It's here to help you remember where you want things to go in your actual collage. Now for the cardstock. If you are only doing either a warm or cool tone sky, just use 1 sheet of cardstock horizontally to create this project. If you are going to do a blend of cool and warm tone sky, place 2 cardstocks vertically next to each other like this and tape them together, then set it aside. Now we are going to make the pieces for our collage. This will take a lot of time. I suggest making larger strips of paper and slightly larger cut pieces than what is shown here, maybe 1-inch pieces instead of the 1/2-inch pieces that were made for this video. If you are going to create your landscape on 1 sheet of cardstock instead of 2, you will only need to cut up half a sheet from each of the colors instead of a full sheet. If you taped 2 sheets of cardstock together, you may need to cut up a full sheet of paper for each color. No matter what, like I said, it will take time, but it will be worth it for the final result. I made my pieces by taking each sheet and cutting thin strips of paper. Then I piled several of the strips of paper together and cut them into small squares, triangles, and rectangles. Again, these were 1/2-inch pieces or smaller. I suggest you make yours a little bit bigger to complete the majority of the project within the hour. Pause the video here until all your pieces are cut up for your artwork. Here comes the fun. Reminder, protect your workspace as things might begin to get a bit messy and sticky. First thing I'm going to do is squeeze a portion of the glue into my bowl and spread the liquid glue across the top left of my paper. If you are doing only warm or cool toned, spread the glue straight across the entire top of your cardstock. This will be the darkest part of the sky. If you do not have a bowl to place the glue, just squeeze the glue directly where you need it and then spread it evenly with the paintbrush. Now I'm going to take dark blue pieces of paper and pour it directly over the glue. If you do not have a cup, you can also pick up some of the pieces with your fingers and sprinkle over the glue with your hands. Gently pat down the paper. Then shake the excess paper over a paper towel or a sheet of scrap paper and pour it back into your container or place it back into a pile. Here I see the middle section did not have any that stuck to the cardstock. Just go back, redo the steps, gently pat down that paper, and remove the excess pieces again. You will need the fallen scraps later. Now we are going to blend two colors together. Spread more glue directly underneath the dark blue. Even dab some of the glue where you see some of the white spaces near the bottom of the dark blue section to blend the two together. Now pour the light blue paper over the glue. Gently pat it down again, then pick up the cardstock, tapping off the excess and putting it back into a pile. I'm going to do the exact same steps for the final cool tone, violet. Notice I am leaving the bottom portion of the paper blank. I want this part dry because this will be the ground for my landscape and it is going to be black. As you can see, I only colored violet on one side of my paper, but I'm not too worried about it. I think the mixture of white and violet pieces of paper will give extra texture and dimension to my piece. Remember to tap off the excess pieces that did not stick onto the paper and put it aside in a pile or in a cup. Continue to work with me as I glue the gradient sky on the other side with the warm tones. Here is what I have so far. Pause the video until you are ready for the next step. Now we are going to do the landscape. This one will be a little bit more detailed as we have specific places we need to put our black paper. I am going to reference the sketch I made and begin placing my black pieces onto the paper. When I was working on the trees, it was definitely much easier to place the glue directly onto the paper instead of brushing it because the piece is still wet and the pieces of paper are still moving around. Once you are done placing your landscape, it is time to do the finer details. We want to cover up as much white, negative space as possible. Now is the time to go to every spot where you see pieces of paper that did not stick to your background and fill in those spots with the proper colors. To get the gradient effect, remember that some of the adjacent colors can blend into one another just by placing a few different pieces into a different colored section. Sometimes waiting a couple minutes for parts of your piece to dry, taking a step away from your work and then coming back to it, you will notice some areas you may have missed before. It's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. Which piece best fits in this area? Once you are pleased with the finished look, it is time to let it dry, preferably overnight. If you used a lot of glue like I did, you will notice your work starting to curl and warp. I needed to add extra weight on top of my art to the corners and the middle to make sure my piece would dry flat. If you add weight to your artwork, make sure the piece is slightly dry to the touch so the paper does not stick to the added weights. Once it is completely dry, remove the weights. I noticed I had a lot of pieces of paper hanging on the edge of my work. I turned my piece over and trimmed the edges so it would be smooth and straight. Here's my finished piece. I am very pleased with how it turned out. The more I filled in the white spaces, the more I saw my piece come to life and see that cool and warm tone gradient and blending of the colors. I hope you are pleased with the end result of your piece as well. Until next time, take care and stay creative.